This week on Hometown Ghost Stories, Austin, Texas is a city with a haunted location on just about every corner. But the most haunted building is the infamous Driskill Hotel. Looming tall on the corner of 6th and Brazos, this 19th century Romanesque hotel is the home to countless spirits. And we had a chance to visit in person and stay on the most haunted floor to see if we could connect with the dead. Join us as we investigate one of Texas's most haunted locations in one of America's most iconic capital cities. This is Hometown Ghost Stories, Austin, Texas, Part 2.
Hometown Ghost Stories contains serious and often distressing events and is not intended for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
The hotel manager looked up from the desk as her head security guard stormed in with a bewildered look on his face. She opened her mouth to ask what was wrong, but he spoke first. Without stopping, he threw his keys onto the desk and shouted, "That's it, I'm done. No more." She stood up from her desk and followed him as he speed-walked towards the exit. "Marcus, what happened?" she called out, but before she got any explanation, he was out the door as it slammed in her face. 45 minutes earlier. Marcus stepped off the elevator onto the 5th floor and headed down the hall. He passed all the familiar paintings that hung on the walls throughout the corridor as he headed to the room where the call had come from. Marcus had been working security for the Driskill Hotel for a couple of years now, and he was getting used to calls coming in from this floor with strange complaints. He approached the door to room 503 and prepared to knock, but before he had the chance, the door swung open. A small young woman with brown hair stood on the other side, looking distressed. "Someone has been breaking into my room and messing with me," she said. Marcus just stood there, waiting for her to elaborate. The woman pointed into the room and explained that she was sure that she shut the lights off before she had left the room earlier that day, but upon her return, found the room completely lit up. She went on to explain that somebody had also gone through her things and rearranged them. But the most disturbing part was when she went to go take a shower. She told Marcus that she took the bar of soap that was on the shelf in the shower and placed it on the side of the sink to make room for her own soap that she had brought. After she finished her shower, she opened the curtain and found the bar of soap standing up vertically on the sink. She was certain that she hadn't balanced it like that. Marcus just nodded and told her that it likely wasn't an intruder because there were no signs of forced entry, but if it made her feel better, he'd have her moved to a different room. Marcus left the room and walked back to the elevator. He was heading down to the lobby to meet the new security guard for his first day of training. He tried not to think about the strange occurrences in the room on the 5th floor and how similar they'd been to other complaints from previous occupants. He was aware of the legends of the old hotel being haunted, but didn't buy into all that. He headed over to the old stairwell to make his rounds before the new guy showed up. He liked this area because it felt old, and you can see all the original brickwork from when the building was built. He was suddenly struck by the pungent aroma of cigar smoke and leaned over the railing to see where it was coming from. Expecting to catch somebody hiding for a quick smoke, he was shocked to see that nobody was there. Suddenly, he heard a raspy male voice over his shoulder ask, "Got a match?" directly into his ear. He jumped and whirled around to see absolutely nobody standing near him. The color drained from his face, and he ran from the building, never to return again. I'm Dave Wilkins, and this is Hometown Ghost Stories, the Driskill Hotel, Austin, Texas.
Jesse Lincoln Driskill was born in 1824 in Tennessee and moved to Texas at the age of 25. He entered the cattle business, and by 1869, he had made a fortune selling cattle to the Confederacy during the Civil War. At this point, he was married to a woman named Nancy Elizabeth, and the Driskill family with their 4 daughters moved to Austin, Texas, where he was given the honorary title of Colonel. Jesse decided to build a luxurious hotel in Austin, one that would rival the grand palaces of Chicago, St. Louis, San Francisco, and New York. In 1884, Driskill purchased a lot by the corner of Brazos and Pecan, later renamed 6th Street, for a total of $7,500 and tore down the bathhouse that stood there to begin construction on the luxurious hotel. The new construction, designed by local architect Jasper N. Preston, was built with over 6 million pressed bricks with limestone accents, marble, cast iron pillars, brass, and glass. Just 2 years later, the Driskill Hotel was ready for its grand opening. The building first opened with 60 rooms and included 12 corner rooms with attached baths. This was a rare feature in the region at the time. The Daily Statesman proudly announced that the Driskill was, quote, one of the finest hotels in the whole country. Jesse spent around $400,000 on the hotel, equivalent to around $92 million today. 2 weeks after the grand opening, the Driskill hosted its first inaugural ball for Texas Governor Sul Ross. The ball went so well that the tradition was quickly established, and they would later hold similar events for Governors William P. Hobby, Miriam Ferguson, John Connolly, Dan Moody, and Ann Richards. In 1887, the Galveston's Beach Hotel would hire about half of the staff from the Driskill Hotel, which proved to be disastrous, and they had to temporarily close their doors. After Driskill apparently lost ownership of his hotel in a high-stakes poker game, the hotel reopened in May of 1888 under the same name as Jesse's brother-in-law Doc took over ownership, once again hosting lavish events to celebrate the opening of the new state capitol building. Jesse Driskill died in May of 1890 of a stroke, and the hotel honored the late colonel by hanging a life-size portrait of him, which still presides today over the opulent lobby. The hotel would change ownership several times over the next few years and go through extensive remodeling in 1895, which added a bank in the lobby of the Driskill. The original vault and door of this bank remain today. In 1909, a barbershop and spa were added in the storefront facing 6th Street, which also included healing sulfur waters or Turkish baths, and they began hosting psychic healers, and customers were able to purchase elixirs from the medicine men that set up shop in the hotel. Lyndon B. Johnson took his future wife, Lady Bird, on their first date at the Driskill dining room for breakfast. This started a lifelong affair for the Driskill and the future president and First Lady of the United States. In 1948, LBJ chose the Driskill Hotel to await the results of his U.S. Senate race against Coke Stevenson in the Jim Hogg Suite, which he won. He returned to the Driskill in 1964 to await the results of his presidential re-election run in the same suite, which he won again. During his presidential tenure, the Driskill served as the headquarters for the White House Press Corps, and a suite, today known as the Governor's Suite on the 5th floor, was permanently reserved for President Johnson. The hotel would continue to change ownership over the years, undergoing massive renovations and upgrades. Today, the hotel still stands in all its glory and is considered to be one of the best in Texas. The building has also earned the reputation as the most haunted building in all of Austin, and one of the most haunted in the entire country. It's said that Jesse Driskill's spirit may still be haunting the hotel and makes his presence known by the scent of his cigar smoke. Quote, one of my favorite stories is one of the few sightings we've had of Colonel Driskill. One of his favorite rooms in the Driskill overlooked 6th Street and Brazos, and there was a consultant in town who woke up one night to see a gentleman standing in his room looking out the window at about 3 o'clock in the morning. He was puffing on a cigar. He sat up in bed and said, "Hey fella, what the hell are you doing in my room?" He said the guy looked at him and gave him a look like, "Your room?" But he didn't say anything. The consultant leaned over and snapped on the light by the bed, and when the light came on, there was nobody standing by the window. But the curtains were still swaying, and there was a cloud of cigar smoke in the air. Multiple news sources and websites rank the Driskill in the top 20 most haunted historic hotels in America, and there's a good reason for that. Jesse's ghost is just one of countless spirits that haunt the building. We took a trip to Austin, Texas, to stay multiple nights inside the hotel to investigate and interview staff and locals to see what's really going on inside the Driskill. we thought we would hear one or two good ghost stories. But we were blown away by the amount of terrifying and chilling ghost stories in and around the Driskill, and some of them even had the evidence to back it up.
While staring at the massive, imposing portrait of Jesse Driskill in the lobby of the hotel, you might just feel someone tug at your side. Looking down, you'll notice that no one is there. Many believe that this is the ghost of a 4-year-old girl named Samantha. The legend behind Samantha is that she was the daughter of a senator, and the family was staying in the Driskill. While playing with a ball on the mezzanine level, Samantha chased it towards one of the two identical staircases. When reaching out for the ball, she slipped and sadly fell to her death. Beginning about a week after the tragedy, guests began hearing a little girl playing with a bouncing ball. When staff or guests would go to check on this child to make sure she was being watched, no one was there. The hauntings of Samantha continue to this day and have even evolved. Samantha seems to have taken a liking to a painting on the 5th floor, causing many to incorrectly believe that this is a portrait of Samantha herself. Although it's not, Samantha has used the portrait to express herself to guests and staff. Multiple reports of seeing the expression of the girl change or move in the picture have been reported over the years. Even more shocking is the fact that this is the only painting in the Driskill that is starting to warp in color and turn all green. Although they have asked experts, they have never been given a reason as to why this is the only painting in the building to do so. When visiting the Driskill, make sure you stop by the 5th floor to see this painting that Samantha has claimed as her own. But before you do, make sure to stop on the mezzanine level. You won't want to miss what's going on in the Maximilian room. When you enter the 1,500 square foot room, the first thing that will catch your attention are the mirrors all around the room. These mirrors were originally a gift from the Emperor of Mexico, Ferdinand Maximilian, for his wife, Carlotta. During his short time as Emperor of Mexico, the country was split and had two ruling governments, some backing the emperor and others backing the President Juarez. The conflict escalated from the very beginning, and eventually, Carlotta would return to the family's native home in Europe. While she was gone, Maximilian would have the 8 mirrors made for his wife as a gift, and it's believed that when he was going to pick them up, he was captured and subsequently executed. Carlotta would never see the mirrors in person. After her husband's death, she disappeared to her castle, which she barely ever left, and many say where she was driven into madness. Staff reported her constant conversations in multiple languages with no one in the room, many times believing it was her husband she was speaking to. Periods of quiet would come crashing down, with Carlotta exploding in a rage, and once even set her hounds on a maid. Carlotta would die in 1927 at the age of 86. A few short years later, the Driskill would be informed that the very mirrors made for Carlotta were in an antique store in San Antonio. The hotel would purchase the mirrors and create the Maximilian room around them. The massive mirrors are made out of gold and diamond dust, with a statue of Carlotta herself at the top of each. The hotel estimates their combined worth to be north of $9 million today. Hauntings from within the mirrors began almost from the time they were placed within the hotel. It is believed that when complimenting the mirror or Carlotta herself, She sometimes appears in the reflection, soaking in the compliments and listening to those speak of her beauty. Some believe she is haunting the mirrors in the afterlife, still searching for her husband by the gifts that she never received in life. However, others believe it's not Carlotta haunting the mirrors at all, but the positioning of the mirrors themselves that are causing the hauntings. Each mirror directly faces one of the others, creating multiple vortexes within the room. Multiple cultures believe that spirits and even demons can pass through these vortexes and into the world of the living. On your way up to the 5th floor to see Samantha's painting, after checking out the Maximilian room, you might want to take a quick detour to room 525. It is believed that history repeated itself in this room close to 100 years apart. These are the tales of the 2 suicide brides of the Driskill Hotel. There's not much known about the first bride. It's believed her wedding was to be held at the Driskill in the late 1800s, and that she was stood up at the altar. Distressed, she rushed back to her room, room 525, and took her own life in the bathtub. Over the years, her ghost has reported to roam the halls in Victorian-era clothing with an expression of sorrow on her face, never responding to guests or staff when they try to talk to her. In 1991, history would sort of repeat itself. A woman whose fiancé called the wedding off decided to come from Houston and stay at the Driskill. Staff that was working at the time said she was a nice woman with an air of sadness surrounding her. One day, staff greeted her as she went to do a bit of shopping. She came back with a few bags and disappeared back into her room. Room 525. A few days later, staff went to check on her. They found her in the bathtub with a revolver and pillow next to her. She had shot herself in the stomach. Months later, while renovating the 5th floor, a construction crew saw a woman with shopping bags walk down the hall and disappear into room 525. They called down to the front office and asked why they were renting out rooms on the floor when it was supposed to be empty for renovations. The staff insisted that they hadn't and sent someone to open the door. The hotel worker and construction supervisor entered the room and saw that it was completely empty. Since then, the woman has been seen walking through the hotel with bags, many believing her to be a guest and interacting with her. The only giveaway that she's not among the living is she disappears as she walks away. If after checking out these spots within the hotel, and you're still brave enough to stay, you may encounter a different spirit if you're a woman. Multiple women have reported the feeling of being watched while in their room alone, especially as they shower. Some have even claimed that when calling out to see if anyone is there, the lights will begin to flicker. Singer Annie Lennox stayed in the hotel one night and had a similar encounter, and has said the man even picked out her stage outfit. The lead singer of the band Concrete Blonde, Jonette Napolitano, wrote the song Ghost of a Texas Ladies Man after a terrifying encounter with him while staying at the Driskill. In an interview, she would go on to say, "He kept turning the lights on and off in my room. I finally unplugged all the lamps. Then he turned on the light in the closet and really, slowly opened the closet door, just like a hand was opening it. The light in the closet shined out into the room, onto the bed. Then I knew for sure he was there.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome into Hometown Ghost Stories, episode number 114, Austin, Texas, part 2. I'm Jesse Wilkins. I'm joined by Rob Coakley. Hello, Rob.
Not only was Austin so big of an episode that we had to make it 2 episodes, we're not even capable of telling the story ourselves. We had to bring in an expert, and we brought one of the finest in tonight to help us talk about Austin, Texas.
And that's Dave Wilkins. Welcome in, Dave. Thank you for joining. Now, Dave's here too. Hello, Dave.
Hey, what's going on?
Yes, but we do have a special guest today, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Jeff Belanger. Welcome in, Jeff.
Hey, good to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for having a phenomenal sounding microphone. That's always a plus.
Yes.
Absolute bonus.
The
It's
most
almost
I
like you
could
do
do.
this for a living.
Sometimes.
Yeah, thank you for joining. So Austin, Texas, this one's a fun one. Let's kick it off first by thanking everybody who's joining in the live stream. Thank you so much. Demon King gifting 20 Hometown Ghost Stories memberships, which is completely appropriate because today's episode is actually dedicated to the one and only legendary Demon King. So thank you so much, Demon King, for the donations, and always an absolute legendary member of the Hometown Ghost Stories family. So thank you, Demon King. This one is for you. So Jeff is our special guest tonight. If you don't know him, he has the well, you have quite the resume. You certainly do. But I was listening to your podcast today, great podcast, and well, you get a hell of a resume. You certainly do. So you have the New England Legends podcast. You wrote for Ghost Adventures. Did you still write for Ghost Adventures? Because
Every episode since episode 1 through today.
That's amazing. Holy
Yeah,
cool.
16 years.
That's awesome.
Do you want to write for Hometown Ghost Stories for free?
Wow.
And that's negotiator Rob. That's why we have him.
I don't know what to say other than no.
That's
So overwhelmed.
So are we.
You also
No, I get
appeared
it.
on. Yeah, you also appeared on another show that I fully enjoyed, which was The Unexplained with William Shatner. This
Yeah, I
was,
just
believe,
filmed
on
another one
Netflix.
last week. So I'll be on again next season. So
Well, congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, welcome in. And thank you so much for joining us on this episode. So you had mentioned that you had been to Austin. You told me that you did your first mechanical bull ride there,
there was beer involved.
as there should be with all mechanical bulls.
And
they
all in Austin.
they tell you in Austin, right? Keep Austin weird. It's like the city slogan. And
It is.
I did my part is all I can say.
Got to keep it
Did
weird.
you last the full 8 seconds?
No, not at all. It's funny because it moves so slow and you think it's going to be easy. You look at it and you're like, oh, come on, get me on that. Like it's hardly moving, but that's a lot of force. And there's a lot of beer. So it's just a bad combination. I also saw the bats fly out from underneath the bridge. I did all the Austin things.
Oh, that's
sounds
cool.
good.
Yeah.
It's amazing that more people don't get seriously injured on mechanical bulls, especially when like alcohol is involved. If I owned a bar, there's no shot I would have a mechanical bull because of the liability that probably comes with people getting injured. And also, like, you're putting drunk people on a mechanical bull. How many people like vomit all over the place? Like, it's disgusting to think about. I don't want anything to do with any of that scenario. But
There's that.
Austin's a great town. How long has it been since you've been out there?
Oh gosh, it's been a few years now. Probably like 8 years or so. But it is a great town. It sticks out, especially in Texas. You know, I've been to Dallas and Houston and El Paso and but it is a great town and they love their ghosts. They've got a lot of ghost culture around there. Not just ghost tours, but I think sort of an air about it of preservation and talking about it, which is cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. It reminded me a lot of San Antonio, which is obviously relatively close. But it seemed like this one had a different haunted building like on every street. There were so many. That's why we had to split into 2 episodes. This is Austin Part 2 now.
Mhm.
We're mainly focusing on the Driskill Hotel, but in the first one we went through a list of haunted places, and there's a whole list of places we haven't even got to. So it's a potential for Austin Part 3. It's a city I would absolutely not hesitate to go back to. It's a fun time, absolutely. Almost too much to do. So we were only there for a weekend, but we probably should have done more time there because we didn't get to do all the things that we wanted to do. But we made it a point to try to visit all of the haunted locations on the top 10 most haunted lists, and we did our best to do that. So
yeah.
Anyways.
What is the top 10? You know what I mean? That's always so funny to me when someone says like, well, this is I get it. If you're selling t-shirts and ghost tours, like this is the most haunted building in Texas or United States or Southwest or whatever. But it's always funny to me when we try to rank these things, because as I'm sure you guys know, you can go to some very, reputed haunt and not see anything. Nothing can happen that day. And then a more obscure one and it's off the charts. You never know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We just discussed this. We were on another show on Friday, like last Friday on the Paranormal Portal. And we discussed that a lot of the investigations that we've done have been at places that we hadn't even really heard about. And we got some of the most compelling evidence at locations that we just didn't expect it. And
Sure.
Another thing that drives me crazy is the same thing that you're talking about. When you rank the most haunted places, one of the things that drives me absolutely nuts is when people put a number on the amount of ghosts that are in a place. Like this place has 77 ghosts.
Yeah.
No
I
more,
only counted
no
40.
less.
Yeah.
Like, hang on, we can't leave until we account for the other 30, 30 so odd ghosts. That kind of drives me nuts. But I mean, it is collecting evidence. It is consistency when it comes to these places. And if you have a certain amount of documented evidence, then you could say, I guess one place could be more haunted than another, but you also don't know if you're just not there at the right time. That's why I always go to the staff. So let's talk to the people that work here, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk to the people that are here every day.
Yep.
And
that's the best way.
Yeah, because they're going to have the most consistent stories, not just it drives me crazy when people are like, oh, I went to the Conjuring house and nothing happened, so it's not haunted.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they're on an off night. Maybe you weren't doing maybe you were approaching it the wrong way. It's completely possible. So
yeah. No,
I've always wondered.
The other thing too, though, is that to me, a haunting just means a reputation. That's it. It means that lots of people are talking about a specific place, and I believe that happens because there's events that are occurring that someone witnesses, and they tell someone else, and they tell someone else, and someone else comes and they have an experience, and it grows and grows. That reputation make our radar, and then it ends up on shows like yours or on Ghost Adventures or whatever else, the many other shows out there, and suddenly more and more people are talking about it. And the only way it goes away is when we stop talking about it, and when it's then it just sort of drifts into obscurity. But if things keep happening, if people are still continuing to have experiences, we'll keep talking about them.
Absolutely. So Dave, were you gonna ask something?
I don't remember.
Good. We didn't want to hear it anyways. You're from the area, so I believe you grew up in Connecticut, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're in Massachusetts, so we're not too far. And then
well, I'm in Massachusetts now too, but I grew up in Connecticut. Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. All right. So you're pretty close. We probably dropped the ball not reaching out and getting you on the Bridgewater Triangle episode.
Probably.
We did cover that recently, but whatever. We can always reach out and bring it back on when we cover it again, because there's still more stuff in there's an endless supply of stuff in the Bridgewater Triangle. Obviously, you focus on New England hauntings in your podcast, and I was listening to your episode on I think it was a rebroadcast of an older one on I can't remember the name of them. The guys with the big heads.
The Melonheads of
Melonheads. Yeah. So that was fun. Yeah. But in that episode, you had mentioned that you had actually met the Warrens. And
I grew up with them. So I grew up in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, and the Warrens were in Monroe, which was the next town over. And so since I was 13, I would go see their talks at libraries in October. And when I first started writing for newspapers, I'd interview them for Halloween features. Been to their house multiple times, and interviewed them on locations and things like that. They were very much just regional celebrities back then. They are way bigger today in death than they ever were in life because of the Conjuring movies. Those Conjuring movies blew them up, and so it was. But back then, this was the 80s and 90s, and there was no internet or anything. So someone would be like, "Oh yeah, that building on Main Street's really haunted." Like, "Oh no, it's not." And they say, "No, Ed and Lorraine Warren checked it out. It's haunted." And that was how you dropped the mic. That was it. Like that was the thing. And it's funny to look back on their legacy now, because they were pioneers in a lot of ways. I mean, they were doing it when very few others were. But also, like they were just so out there, and now they have movie deals. Now they're alive to see it anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of sad to see that, they weren't able to see it blow up the way that it did. I mean, Lorraine she was actually had a little cameo in I think the first Conjuring movie.
She
right?
did. Yeah, there's a scene where they're lecturing in a college and the camera pans across the room. It was funny to watch the Conjuring movie and be like, wow, I know every single person being portrayed in this movie. I know the whole Perrin family. I know the house. I live 30 minutes away from that house. I mean, I know Ed and Lorraine Warren. Keith and Carl Johnson were the first to actually investigate and brought in the Warrens before, I heard it all. It was crazy. And it's funny to see when something goes pop culture. And then of course, once Hollywood gets their hand on it, people think it's a documentary. They don't think that it's a complete work of fiction. They think this is what really happened there. And no, almost none of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The Perrin family actually hated the Conjuring movie because it didn't tell their story really. And in their words, the real story was much scarier than the actual movie, which is saying a lot because I actually loved the movie. I thought it was a very scary movie. I thought it was well done, but if you know the actual story, you're like, well, this isn't really what happened. The Warrens exited the scenario before the end of it, as we know, but still cool. Anyway,
yeah, it's totally cool. It was so I was I've done some shock docs for Discovery Channel. I've been interviewed for a bunch of those, and there was one where they were doing the interviews at the Conjuring house, and I was going to go there to do the interview, and my daughter, who was about 13 at the time, she loved the movie too. And I said, hey, do you want to go with me to this film shoot? It's at the Conjuring house. She's like, oh my God, yeah. So I told him, I said, hey, I've got childcare issues. I need to bring my daughter. They're like, yeah, no problem. Total lie. I had no childcare issues at all. I just wanted to bring her. And so we get there and, we're checking it out. And I'm like, listen, you have to use the bathroom before we go. Make sure you use the bathroom. And we were there for 4 hours. She probably used the bathroom 2 or 3 times. And when we were getting in the car to leave, I said, did you use the bathroom? She's like, yeah, what the hell is with you? I said, yes, I use the bathroom. I said, that's awesome. You can tell your friends forever you peed in the Conjuring house.
Yeah. So did Dave, but we didn't tell anyone where he peed.
Yeah, so we got that.
Yeah. That's amazing, though. Let's put a pin in that, and we'll come back to this. I got a million questions I want to ask you about all that stuff, but let's talk a little bit about the Driskill Hotel. Sure. So, as we said, we just got back from Austin. We spent multiple nights inside the Driskill Hotel, and I know what people are probably asking, okay, we had overnight at the Driskill Hotel. We didn't air too much of our paranormal investigation inside the hotel. That doesn't mean we didn't get anything. What we got was, first of all, some security footage that we're going to air in a little bit, which I thought was absolutely crazy. It happened the night before we got there, and security saw us walking around with the Hometown Ghost Stories gear, and they pulled us over like, hey, you guys got a paranormal show? We're like, yes. They're like, all right, you got to see this. And they showed us the security footage. And we'll air that in a little bit, but it was super cool. Here's the thing with this one, and we like to do spirit box sessions, your typical stuff, EVPs. Here's what we have and present it, because mainly we're an audio podcast. But we caught in this hotel was a ton of REM pod activity and nothing really on the spirit box, nothing really in terms of EVPs, but basically stuff that isn't great for audio. So I'll air a little bit of the clip, but really after calibrating it and after sitting and leaving the REM pod to do its thing for a little while and figure out the room, it started absolutely freaking out to a point where we're like, dude, just shut it off because this is obnoxious. So the REM pod was freaking out. The EMF detectors were going off, but basically for audio listeners, I'm not going to air the 3 hours of footage we have of the REM pod just constantly beeping at us because it is not good for audio. So I will play a little bit of the clip. If people want to stick around after we close out the show, we'll play a little bit and then we'll drop some exclusive stuff on Patreon and Discord and stuff like that. But for audio listeners, we will go over the hauntings at this hotel and what we captured. But as for that kind of footage that you usually get in these type of episodes that we do, not great for audio. So that's kind of where we're at on that. But excited to talk about that security footage. But overall, let's just hop into it. So we get to the hotel, we check in, we stayed on the 5th floor of the original part of the building. There's an annex with a whole bunch of other floors. You take a separate elevator to get up to that section, but we were in the original section. The hotel is gorgeous, absolutely amazing. Like you step in, the footage spoke for itself for audio listeners, marble everywhere, giant pillars, just absolutely beautiful wood carvings. The whole hallway is full of paintings on pretty much every floor, especially on the 5th floor. You have these libraries in the lobby. It's just the whole hotel is absolutely gorgeous, absolutely amazing. And the hauntings we got right away. Like they handed us a paper right at the front desk of the hauntings that are at the hotel. So they embrace it, which is cool. We love to see that. We've been at hotels that don't embrace it, We've spoken to hotels that don't embrace it and they just kind of want nothing to do with it. This is one where it seems like they're all about it and it's cool. And the first thing you really see is you step in the lobby and you see a giant painting of Jesse Driskill, which they said is life size. But I remember this thing being massive. It was Jesse Driskill, 23 feet tall.
Seriously, was he 10'6"?
But that's what now most of my source on this, the actual website for the Driskill Hotel puts together like a phenomenal timeline of everything that happened. So a lot of it was an actual timeline of events there. And they described it as a life-size version of Jesse Driskill. So Jason says, that's actually a funny comment. I thought both people on the left were you. I was so confused. Yes, we do look similar. We have a dress code. Jeff, I forgot to email you. You have to wear a backwards snapback and you have to grow out a beard to be on this show, but we'll let you
next
stay.
time.
Thanks. Yeah.
You got some work to do. I'm actually glad we brought Jeff on for this show because in regards to the hauntings at the Driskill, I was listening to your episode on the Chase House.
Oh, yeah.
And I think there's some similarities here in terms of, I think there's actual hauntings here. And I think just like the Chase House, we don't know who the actual hauntings are. So people are looking for stories to associate with the hauntings, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to go through some of these hauntings and we talk about the senator's daughter, the 5-year-old, 4-year-old girl that allegedly died on the marble staircase in the front hall right by the Jesse Driskill photo. And we have nothing to verify that. We can't find any records of a senator's daughter dying there. The senators that it could have been at the time, it doesn't match up to their family tree at all. So maybe it was a different girl and people were just trying to associate it with a senator.
Yeah.
But we don't even know that happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So that is one of the big ones.
So we see that all the time in almost every haunt. So anytime there's haunting phenomenon, people sort of invent backstory, and I've called it most famous phenomena forever. So if there's a ghost that's haunting a building, it often gets tied to the most famous person that was ever in that building. And you're like, yeah, George Washington stayed here 2 nights back in 1779, and he's haunting here forever. And you're like, really? I mean, that dude got around, and but for all you know, it was like a gardener who fell off the roof drunk in like 1950, But we do that. We and the problem is, the world is chaotic and it's scary and it's unpredictable. And when we get information that doesn't compute, like a ghost, like a little girl coming down the stairs, if we identify it, it gives us a false sense of control, right? Like, oh, that's the senator's daughter. She's not going to hurt us. There was a senator that was here. Daughter fell down the stairs. It could be that happened at a different hotel, and that it got attached to the Driskill because the Driskill is the most famous haunt, in that, microcosm part of Austin. Mm-hmm. It could be that, it was just a conglomerate of different stories that got pushed together over time. That happens. Doesn't mean it's not haunted. Doesn't mean there's not the ghost of a little girl. It's just probably misidentified.
Yeah,
exactly.
Totally agree.
And you can get the same thing actually with Jesse Driskill's ghost too. So you have the one ghost sighting, and that was reported in a book. We actually met the author while we were there, and she gave us a breakdown on some of the hauntings and stuff like that. So you have the one ghost sighting from a person that was staying at the hotel, said he woke up, saw a man just standing in the room, looking out the window, smoking a cigar. And then he flicked on the light and the figure was gone. And what was a little bit different about this story is he actually saw like a puff of like cigar smoke that was lingering after the ghost disappeared. So that's your one ghost sighting of Jesse Driskill. Other than that, the hotel embraces it and they say you sense when Jesse Driskill's ghost is around because you smell the cigar smoke. And you can mark that off your bingo cards. We have bingo cards going of, things that you're going to get at every haunted location. A woman in white. You're going to get the smell of cigar smoke. You're going to get orbs, whatever.
Yeah.
But with the smell of cigar smoke, I mean, everyone's smoking cigars at this time. This could be any ghost, or it could not be a ghost at all. And you're just smelling that.
There's also a cigar shop on the first floor.
There was, yeah.
Not
anymore, but it was a very prominent cigar shop in the late 1800s, early 1900s, where people came to buy their cigars at the Driskill. So every consumer that came in there, and that could be residual, right? Like Tom came to the Driscoll every Thursday to buy his cigars, and it's just a residual haunting of him buying his cigar, lighting one, and going out. But we're gonna tie it to Jesse Driscoll because we have this massive portrait of him that's about the size of 4 Daves. So
Right. Yeah, and that happens all the time, right? It gives us a false sense of control to identify this thing, or some psychic medium says loud enough that, oh, it's actually the ghost of Elvis is haunting this building, and you go, I'm not sure Elvis was ever even here. Nope, doesn't matter. That's what Spirit told me, and you go, oh, well, then I can't argue with that, can I? And I mean, we're sort of at an impasse there, but that happens too. Sometimes the word of psychics gets into the canon of the haunt, and it becomes part of the legend, whether you like it or not.
True.
which
Ulysses,
makes me think of Elvis impersonators. How many haunting Elvis impersonators are we going to have coming up over the next 30 years or so? And people are going to think it's Elvis haunting these different chapels and places. Like, no, it's definitely Elvis. It's like, no, that was Fred. He used to dress up as Elvis.
You've
And
made
that
the
was-
grave mistake of mentioning Elvis on a podcast again, Rob. Now,
Oh my God,
the comments
no.
are going to be full of angry Elvis people.
Oh,
It never ends. It never ends.
God
We did a
bless him.
side content episode on the ghost of Elvis Presley, and it's just the most incoherent ramblings from old Elvis fans in the comments. It's actually comical. Like, you spend a day just reading these comments from these folks. But
So I've always thought about, why do certain people see ghosts, and why do they turn up, and when, and so on. And I think part of it, so you step into the Driskill and you're stepping back in time to an extent, obviously, right? It's modernized. There's flat screen TVs and electricity and all that other stuff, but it's putting you into a mindset where you're trying to connect to the past. And I've always said there's no such thing as ghosts without a living witness somewhere in the mix. There has to be a living person. Even if you set up cameras and leave, you're still there by proxy, right? You are filming. And so we are we are an ingredient in the recipe of a haunting, always. And as I'm sure you've seen, different groups of people have different results. Some people are magnets, and other people, like, nothing happens around them. I don't know why. If I could predict it, I would be happy to, organize something if I could make the ghost appear, but I can't. But I do know that I think we are summoning them. And I don't mean that in some woo-woo sort of like new agey sense. I mean, when you are in a location and you're thinking about this stuff, you're connecting to who's been there before you, and you literally pull them from the past to the present, whether that's literally their spirit or some sort of residual thing that you're tuning into the movie that is playing over and over. I don't know, but I do know that there must be some reason that different people are describing the same phenomena in these various buildings, and I think that's part of it.
And that's what's important too, is when you look at hauntings and you look at the evidence collected by paranormal investigators and visitors and staff and stuff like that, you look for the consistency in these haunts. Are they experiencing the same thing? Are they experiencing the same sounds? For example, with this ghost of the little girl, we don't know if it's actually a senator's daughter, but the haunts are so consistent that there's got to be the ghost of a little girl there. And people are hearing laughter. They're hearing a rubber ball being bounced down the stairs. It's a distinct sound. We all remember getting pelted with one of those things in gym class, and that little ping that it makes. The sound of a rubber ball. So if multiple people are hearing and experiencing this haunt, that means, yes, there's probably the ghost of a little girl haunting the staircase. Whether or not she died on that staircase, maybe. Was she a senator's daughter? It seems like probably not.
Probably
Again,
not.
From what year, we don't know. But with senators, you think you can track pretty much all of their family lineage. There's actually good record keeping on that. So,
the other thing too is that that would make the news. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a senator's child dying in a hotel I guarantee you would be in print somewhere.
Absolutely.
That doesn't get brushed under the rug. I spend so much of my life in the newspaper archives, and whenever someone makes a bold claim like that, like a senator's daughter died in 1902, like, I can look that up.
Right.
that they wouldn't forget to cover that. So sometimes the stories start to fall apart. And again, like we said before, it doesn't mean a little girl didn't die there. It's not haunted by a little girl, but probably not the senator's child.
in
Exactly.
Monica Ballard's book, she was the person who did the ghost tour for us, and she wrote a book. We referenced her earlier, but she suspects that, and I don't know how true this could be, that Jesse Driskill and the senator whose daughter allegedly died there were buddy, and that happened so close to when the hotel was open that there might have been a hey, let's keep this off the record so the hotel doesn't get all the bad press. That, coupled with, she said, that the fact that girl was so young that the Census Bureau wouldn't have recorded that death, which I don't think sounds like it makes sense to me. But
that doesn't check out.
right.
Now, people do commit suicide in hotels all the time. Even in modern day, they check in with no intention of checking out. They don't want their loved ones at home to find them. And that does stay out of the papers. They just pronounce them dead at the hospital because that would just hurt a hotel's business.
Right.
When you get friendly with certain hotels that have reputations and they start telling you like, I'm not going to name names. It doesn't matter. You've heard of it. I guarantee you. But they're like, yeah, our policy is we do get a new mattress. I'm like, oh, that's good. That's good to know.
That actually is great to know.
That's actually, you know what? I'm good with that. That's fine. So yeah, we'll replace the mattress. I'm like, good enough for me.
Thank you.
They leave the sheets though.
No.
Same sheets, new mattress.
They still won't wash the comforter. They don't do that.
No. But yeah, don't bring the black light. You don't want to know. You don't need
Definitely don't bring the black light.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. I think that's interesting to bring up too, because we have this other really crazy out there tale of the two suicide brides of the Driskill Hotel that both supposedly took their own lives in the bathtub in room 525. And we just honestly don't have particular records for this. And the one problem is you have people going around saying that they have police reports of this. And then when you ask them for it, they're like, we can't find it, or we don't know exactly where it is. And you can't find them online. But when you research the Driskill, you will find a bunch of people that did take their own lives and people that lost their lives within it. And I wonder why we always go to romanticizing or just expanding on and making the story bigger when you don't need to make it bigger. There are people, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, it sounds like a great story, but once you tell me that both brides did it in the same room number in almost the same fashion, my brain goes, that's way too much of a coincidence for it to happen, right?
I get, and the suicide bride appears in quite a number of hotels, by the way.
Many.
Like, yeah, that's not unique at all to the Driskill. So yeah, no, and not only that, this is something I discovered, again, years of research in the newspaper archives. The suicide used to be in the headline, especially in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And the reason for that is that when someone young died untimely, like today, if you read an obituary today and someone's like 30 years old and it'll say like, so-and-so died suddenly last week and the funeral services will be this, you're like, it's probably suicide. Otherwise they would say cancer or illness or whatever.
Yeah.
Back then they told you suicide in the headlines because diseases like consumption, tuberculosis, like were so rampant that you didn't want people to get spooked, that it was something that they could that was contagious, that they could catch. And so it would be like so-and-so suicides at such and such hotel. So that did make the news. The bride element, I mean, at some point it gets romanticized, right? It's always like the bride waiting or the bride, I think it was Edgar Allan Poe who said something to the effect of like, the death of a beautiful woman is the most poetical topic in the world. And you're just like, yeah. So if it was a girl, then she must have been really pretty and she must have been a bride. And so we just keep going and going and going, making it the worst possible thing it could be. So we remember it. And maybe that's not wrong, because that's kind of how folklore and legend work, right? Is that it's the telephone game. I tell you a story, you tell another, you add a little bit of yourself. And then suddenly the story gets bigger and more memorable. If it's the death, the suicide of a bride, that's just the worst thing we could possibly imagine.
We need more suicide grooms. Like, where's the suicide groom stories? We don't have any of those.
No, he's the guy that ran off. So yeah, no, I get it. I totally get it. But it's wild, right? When you start to see these same stories play out in hotels around the world, not even around the country, right? Like, the same stories.
And many of them are seen, like their haunting is reported to be seen in a wedding dress. And it's like a lot of them, they're engaged to be married. They might not even had a wedding dress yet. Why would they be wearing their wedding dress? Unless they committed suicide during their wedding. I don't see that would be it. But I mean, you can't rule it out. Like we always say on the show, we don't make the rules. No. But it seems like a lot of these, the hauntings, it doesn't mean the place isn't haunted, but a lot of these stories just get romanticized and it becomes a snowball effect.
Of course. And no, again, haunted, because you spoke to the staff, you spoke to people that, I mean, everyone knows the Driscoll's haunted. And I'm not saying, of course it is, absolutely. But why? Well, that's the thing. And so because we don't know why, we start inventing stories that would explain it. Those are logical backstories as to why someone might be stuck there, right? Like you could conceive that. It doesn't mean you're right, but it is us trying to put a label on something that is by nature undefinable.
Right. Bruce actually brings up a good point. Says most suicide rooms are probably murder suicides, so the bride is still the focus.
Wow,
that's actually a good
just
point.
got darker.
It did.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
It did. And then Brodad brings up the best point of all, which is that groom gets stood up, he just goes to the bar. It's usually the case, right?
And finds spirits every time.
Every time.
That's true. Yep. Yeah. Our experts at finding the spirits at bars, that's for sure.
Speaking of finding spirits at the bar, I think this is the perfect time to show the footage that the Driscoll gave us. And just to go over the backstory again, we were at the Driscoll. We were investigating Friday night. Saturday morning, Dave and I were in the lobby taking some film of the lobby, and the manager runs over to Dave and basically said to Dave, well, Dave, why don't you just...
Yeah, he comes to me and goes,
Since it's you.
because I was wearing the
You're
sweatshirt, it said Hometown Ghost Stories. And he said, you guys like ghost stories? I'm like, yes, we do. He's like, check this out. So he goes, last night around midnight, the hotel bar was closed, and we got a noise complaint from a noise coming from the bar. Nobody should have been in there. So we sent the security guard over to take a look, and he pulls his phone out. He's like, look what the security footage caught. So Jesse, you can roll that now, and I'll tell you what's going on for the audio listeners. So you see the security guard walking across. He walks by this little rope barrier thing, and as he walks by, it moves. Now, he wasn't anywhere near it when it moved. And then you see him turn around and look back, and the security guard says that he heard the chain move as he walked by, and that got his attention. He saw it moving. And that's weird.
So in the video, you could see he does put his hand on the pole next to it, but it doesn't look like he really does anything to it. And then the rope moves like a full 4 seconds after he walks by it.
Yeah,
and
so
you can see
5
it.
steps.
And apparently it was swaying, and it made enough noise where you see he stops dead in his tracks, and he turns back to see what the hell was making that noise. It's a pretty cool video. And if you watch it full speed, zoomed out, you could really see it sway back and forth after he walks by it. And I mean, but this isn't even really the first part of the ghost story. First part of the ghost story is nobody's in this bar and they got a noise complaint of it. So,
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right. Yeah, don't bury the lead, right?
And this bar is in the middle of the hotel. So there's no windows near it. There's no breeze. Not that even if there was, I don't think this looks like it was caused by a breeze. It's just sort of an abnormal movement. It kind of just almost jerks. And it's definitely not caused by him walking by. He's a good, like Rob said, 5 steps away by the time it moves.
Yeah.
It is weird. I keep trying to tell myself in my head with a skeptical eye, because he does put his hand on that could have caused it to move. But if it did, it probably would have moved right away. So I don't really have an explanation for...
Right. Like if you saw him tip the pole that's holding it, maybe that would have caused a delayed reaction, but he didn't, because the pole didn't move, just the rope.
Yeah, Velcro brings up that it looks like the clip may have been stuck on the other side, and him touching the pole caused it to slide. Again, maybe, but I think that would have been immediate. So it's the delay that gets me on this clip.
It's the delay and the noise.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it's him looking back to see it. So I found it overly compelling. I think it's the way it slinks too. It almost feels like an unnatural way that it moves down when it's finally slinks down. It feels like it should be either faster or even slower. Like it's just a weird speed that it comes down. So I was just like, as we were, I think we watched it 50 times when they gave it to us. I was like, because we're trying to debunk it, of course, right?
Yeah.
You know, the other thing we had at this particular establishment is we were riding the elevator and we got this smell that I Dave, do you remember what you described it as? Because I can't even remember what it smelled like.
I don't remember. It was something, Jesse, you mentioned you thought it was food, but whatever it was that I smelled that I mentioned, it was like a distinct smell of something, and I don't remember what it was, but I do remember it wasn't food.
It wasn't food, and it was the only time, and it only happened one time when we rode in this elevator, and obviously we rode in the elevator a lot. We were staying on the 5th floor. It was just one time we were going down the elevator, and it wasn't cigar smoke.
Mm-mm.
So very, very unique to us because I don't think we've smelled anything on an investigation yet.
The only place we got that was the Winslow house. We haven't released that episode, but yeah, we got the heavy scent of like lavender while we were in the downstairs like fireplace room. But other than that, we haven't gotten much in terms of like strange scents that shouldn't be there. This one was weird. My first initial reaction was I thought it was something that smelled kind of like food, but it wasn't like a bad smell. It was something that shouldn't have been on the elevator, and it just was very distinct. Couldn't pinpoint it. I wish we remembered what Dave had mentioned, because I think you were spot on. Once you had mentioned it, we're like, yeah, that's the smell. Also shouldn't be in the elevator. So that's something. It was definitely something different.
Are the staff ever scared of certain areas of the hotel?
They seem to be universally, from the ones that I spoke with, they say that the 5th floor was universally regarded as, by staff, maids and stuff like that, they say the 5th floor is the most haunted. Did you speak with anyone else, or did you have something to add there, Rob?
Yeah, so one of the people that we spoke to, or that I spoke to, so they have a lot of secret entrances in this hotel. We should have probably put a video of one of the doors. Like the wall will just become a door. It's very cool. And it was for back in the day to get to different places in the hotel relatively fast. So they have a lot of secret doors that go in and out of places. And one of the staff members was saying that as she walks around in those areas, she has felt a presence alongside her. And she's also smelled the cigar smoke in those corridors a few times as she's walking through there. So she seems to think that's like, for her more personal experiences have happened in those back rooms, and totally understandable. I mean, again, we're talking about a hotel with a history of 130 years. You know, how many staff could be haunting this place? We do have staff. There's so many ghosts that we did not get into in this episode. There was a front desk woman that works there that you can hear her high heels walk across the marble floor in the lobby, and I believe she has, I think it's lavender, or it's definitely a specific perfume.
Are you talking about Miss Bridges?
Yes.
Okay, so Miss Bridges worked at the front desk for several years in the early 1900s, though she did not perish in the hotel. Mrs. Bridges has been seen walking from the vault out to the middle of the lobby, the site of the old desk. So that's where the front desk used to be. It's only seen late at night, and she's clothed in a Victorian-style dress, and she's accompanied by the smell of roses.
Roses, that's what it was.
Could that have been what we smelled? I don't remember it being floral, but either way.
Andrew said nutmeg, and he was with us. I don't know if that's... I don't remember if that was it or not. I don't know. I can't remember. It was something distinct, though. For some reason, I'm thinking like Band-Aids or something. It wasn't Band-Aids, but it was something so distinct that it was like, when you think about it, it's like, that's exactly what that smell is. It wasn't Band-Aids. It might have been nutmeg.
Are you going
I always
around
get nutmeg and
sniffing
Band-Aids
Band-Aids?
confused.
You don't remember this? Everyone knows what Band-Aid smells like. Come on now.
Rob's pretending.
Yeah, he is. But it says that she used to obsess over the flower arrangements that would have been there, which might be why she smells like roses, or people smell roses. So not a perfume smell, which a lot of people usually affiliate with flower or floral stuff, but it's may have been that she used to obsess over the flowers. So
the thing about hotels too, right? There's such transient places, right? People come and go. Workers don't usually stay all that long, right? It's not a job most people have for life. Some, of course, managers or bartenders or whatever, but for the most part, there's so much human energy coming and going out of these buildings all the time. I don't even know how you could identify, what a ghost. But my goodness, how many haunted hotels have you heard of? Like almost most of them.
All of them.
Yeah, right. Like, yeah, it's just the boring, nondescript chain ones that don't seem to get a reputation, but all the rest.
Sometimes they do. There was one in San Antonio. It was the what was it? It was the Holiday Inn in San Antonio. That's like the most haunted hotel in the entire city.
Well, yeah, because it used to be a prison. And you can still see like the prison bars, but you think of a Holiday Inn, you're like, come on, you got the Menger Hotel, you got the Emily Morgan out there. Like, these are the haunted hotels. And like, no, you got to do the Holiday Inn. We're like, oh, come on. That's so boring. But it's not, because the history of that location is actually crazy. So
true.
The Holiday Inn in Taunton is supposedly super haunted.
That's right.
Huh.
About that.
So
hey, when you guys were in San Antonio, did you get to go to the train tracks where the you can put your car in neutral and the little kids
Ghost hands? We didn't
that's where I believe that urban legend was born. It exists all over now, but I think that was patient zero for that story.
Yeah, we did look into it, but we didn't have. I don't believe we rented a vehicle when we were in San Antonio.
Got it.
It wasn't close enough for the Riverwalk.
Take an Uber. Hey, all right. Did you put it in? Weird request. We're going to put some talcum powder on your trunk.
If you want a 5-star review, you got to do the following things.
He's like, oh, this is the third time tonight I've done this. So whatever, like, just do what you got to do. Yeah.
And give us your phone because we're going to give ourselves a 5-star review on Apple iTunes. So that's.
I feel like we should explain this. I feel like for those who aren't following, this is very cryptic. There's an urban legend where there's these train tracks, and years ago a school bus was stuck on the tracks, hit by a train. All the children died. And today, if you put your car in neutral right in front of the tracks, an unseen force will push it up and over the tracks to safety. And if you put talcum powder on your trunk, you'll see a bunch of little fingerprints when it's over on the other side. And that story popped. I know there's 2 in Massachusetts. There's one in Greenville. I forget where the other one is, but that story now pops up all over. And then you can go and try it, which is always amazing because the funny thing is it works.
Yeah.
But if you put talcum powder on your trunk right now in your driveway, fingerprints will show up. They're yours.
Oh,
right.
That makes sense.
So, but imagine, you do it there and you put the powder, and then after just a minute or so, the oil in your fingerprints soaks it up and you see all the little fingerprints. It's, smoking gun, literally.
Yeah.
Mm.
But if your car does get pushed across, then that's kind of cool, right?
Yeah. So in some places it's an optical illusion. There's a little dip in the road, but it looks like it's uphill and your car gets just enough momentum to get up and over. It's so, but imagine, so you try it. You do the talcum powder, you put it in neutral, the car does go up and over, and then you see the fingerprints and you're like, my God, it's true. Right.
Yeah.
And it is true. Sort of. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not the ghost. It's just science.
Yeah. There's that.
Gravity, momentum.
Yep. Or it could be ghosts. They could be assisting, but yeah, you're right. If that is a place where you would be touching all the time, obviously opening and closing your trunk. So it makes sense as to why fingerprints would be there. So very cool. We kind of covered most of the ghosts there. The mirror room was super cool. The whole hotel was cool. We were able to visit all of these places. And the other thing is the elevator does kind of have a mind of its own. When we were checking in, we're standing at the front desk and I'm watching the elevator just open and close for no reason. I'm just like, what's happening? Like immediately, like this is now going on. So it's been a thing where they say that the elevator has a mind of its own. Sometimes it'll just take us, people up and drop them off at the 5th floor for no reason. When we were in the elevators, they worked fine. I did have
no. It kept stopping. Which floor did it keep stopping at?
I think
The 3rd or the 4th floor?
4th floor.
Every time, like not every time, but like a lot of the times we would be either coming in or going, and it would just stop on the 4th floor.
Right.
The only thing is because you're like, people are going to get on, and no one was there. Every time, no one was there.
Could be something where the elevator has a mind of its own, but I have such a hard time thinking that maybe somebody didn't just press the button and then be like, oh, I forgot something in my room, and that they walk away. The elevator's going to stop there.
Multiple times, the same floor?
Yeah, maybe. The
4th floor is also haunted. There's a chapter in Monica's book that talks about the vortex on the 4th floor, which I won't get into, but that is a haunted floor.
Yeah, it seems that the whole building seems to be haunted, especially the 5th floor there.
Let's hit on the mirror room real quick, though, because I do want to talk about the vortexes there, because we haven't talked about vortexes too much on this show. Jeff, do you have any insight on the mirror vortex? Do you think that it's just a huge urban legend, or do you think there's some credibility into that?
Well, so people have been mirror gazing for millennia, right? Before there were mirrors, you would gaze into a bowl of water. And the interesting thing about a mirror is also the same thing that's interesting about a photograph, right? So any photograph you've ever seen is distorted, all of them, 100%, because the world is 3-dimensional and a photograph is 2-dimensional. The mirror takes our 3-dimensional world and makes it 2-dimensional. And there's so much myth and legend around a mirror, right? In Judaism, when someone dies, you cover all the mirrors for a week, right? That's part of the standard operating procedure. So there is something sort of mystical about a mirror. Break one, it's 7 years bad luck. Gaze into it, you might see more than you counted on. Say Bloody Mary 3 times, and you know what I mean? I do believe there is some sort of mysticism that's inherent to all mirrors, but especially when they're old and worth a fortune.
Yeah.
And like those, what are those old lead mirrors, right? I mean, those are the really expensive ones, so yeah, and of course sometimes we see things reflected back that we don't think were there in the beginning. So it's kind of not surprising when you put something in there. There's a power in it. Think of every fairy tale, mirror, mirror on the wall. I mean, it's been ingrained in us since childhood that there's something inherently magical about these things. There is something to it, and because it is distorting the reality the minute you look at it.
Yep. Yeah. Even in fictional stories, vampires can't see their reflections in the mirror, as Brodad brings up there. There's definitely something with it. You have the process of scrying and all the other ones that you just mentioned there. So there's definitely something there. The craziest part of this story that gets me every single time is that they just went and bought these mirrors, that these mirrors just ended up in an antique shop in San Antonio. They bought them and they're valued at like what, $8 million total? $9 million total. Absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Also kind of insane that with that much value, not that we ever would or would ever recommend it. We just kind of strolled into that room. Like, if these things are worth $9 million, I mean, I don't know how heavy they are, but we could have made a run for it with one of them, right? Like,
I don't know.
Wouldn't recommend it.
Made a run for it with those ones. Those
don't do it,
big, man.
They're huge. Those huge, but
are massive. Yeah. The other thing with these mirrors too, it's not just the mirror portion; it's the personal attachment, right? We're talking about an object that Maximilian, the Emperor of Mexico, bought for his wife, who was. Her name was actually Charlotte of Belgium instead of like the name that you normally hear for her. But there's her bust on the top of all of them, and she never received these mirrors, and she's supposedly haunting them. And my mind goes to, well, maybe he should have been the one that's haunting them. But then I start thinking of it from the other aspect. It's like in death, she's finally at the mirrors waiting for her husband. Right. So just because she never saw them doesn't mean that she couldn't have some sort of attachment to them, especially if she knew about them. So I don't know. There's so many different ways to look at this particular haunting, but that room is amazing. Like, going to Austin, you have to, even if you don't stay at the Driskill, you need to go walk around the Driskill and see these things. And they do a tour every day. So at 4:00, you can go to the Driskill. And if you're a guest, it's free. I don't know what you have to pay if you're not a guest of the hotel. They will bring you around. They'll show you all this stuff. They'll show you the mirror room. They'll tell you about it. So highly, highly recommend going and seeing the Driskill Hotel.
Yeah, they bring you to that room, and that's kind of like the only thing in that room. I mean, I'm sure they do events there and stuff like that, but when we walked in there's no furniture, nothing. It was just you're looking at the mirrors on the walls, and there is something eerie about that room, even though it's absolutely gorgeous. It's a different take on the haunted hotels. We've all been to those rundown hotels where it adds an element of creepiness because it's rundown, or your average haunted house. Like, the creepier ones are the ones that are not nice, beautiful homes. It's the old rundown ones that get you. But this one, being absolutely gorgeous, it still has that feeling. It really does. It starts with the big painting in the lobby, which had its own stories too. Like, there was a shootout, and they had to restore the painting because the bullet hole went right into Jesse's hip or something like that. And so you can actually kind of see the area that they touched up, but that's a shootout. That's something tied to it. And then you get up to the second level. It's really eerie. It's really eerie on that mezzanine level because there's not a lot going on up there. I think that's where they just have like the function halls and the different rooms, and you see the gym hog room and everything like that. And so when you get up there, you're usually just by yourself, and it's still a gorgeous place, but those rooms, each one you go into, you can just kind of feel the history. And there's so much of it with this hotel, with LBJ and the viewings on the presidential runs and the Senate runs and everything like that. Like, these are rooms where history was made. And it's very cool that it still stands, it's still upkept, it's still a classy place. And it's absolutely amazing. And there's definitely something going on there. Definitely is. Both the rooms that we had on the 5th floor, nonstop activity with the EMF and the REM pod and everything. So there was something there. It's just we didn't really get the stuff that we wanted to air in terms of like audio and stuff, but you're not going to get it everywhere. You're not going to. So
there was a pretty cool ghost story about the mirror room that I have a pre-produced video for it that we got left out of the intro thing. I'll post it in Patreon for everyone to see, but the story was pretty cool. So back in the 90s, a photographer was hired to go shoot this wedding dress there was a company that wanted to shoot all their wedding dresses. It was for a modern day wedding dress shoot. So he got there early, and the hotel manager let him into the room, said, "This is the Maximilian room. Check out all the mirrors, set your stuff up. The people with the dresses will be here soon." So she shuts the big doors to the room, and he's in there by himself, and he's setting his equipment up, and he hears one of the big doors swing open, and he glances up real quick in the mirror and sees a woman in a old antebellum style wedding dress walk into the room. And he made a comment. He's like, "Oh, I thought we were doing modern." And he turns around and nobody's there. The door's open and the room's completely empty. He's like, "That's weird." Looks back at the mirror where he saw her reflection and sees her there, standing there again, smiling. And then he turns around again and she's gone. So he freaks out and runs out of there. But he thinks that that might have been the ghost of the woman who is attached to those. He said she bared a striking resemblance to the bust at the top of the mirrors.
Yeah, and that's the creepiest part about the mirrors too, is every single one. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It's not like a creepy woman staring down at you, but it's every single mirror has that same face on it, and it's a little
creepy.
It's a little creepy.
Carlotta is the name we're looking for. It's like I said, Carlotta was like the name she used in Mexico, but Charlotte was her real name, Princess of Belgium. So,
gotcha. Right. Yeah, so that's her image on the top of every single one of those mirrors. So very cool, very haunted place. So we had mentioned earlier, do you guys want to put a pin in Driskill? We're running pretty long here.
Yeah.
Or is there anything else you guys want to mention? But yeah, that's pretty much that. So we had talked about a little bit of the Bridgewater Triangle stuff and the fact that you're local to the area. And so of all the places, I know you cover New England hauntings on your podcast and everything. And for people that haven't checked out his podcast, make sure you check that out. We left it in the show notes below. It's very well produced, which I always appreciate first and foremost. And it's very informative. So a lot of fun on that one.
Thanks.
Where would you rank? I mean, like the most haunted places in New England. What's your go-to? What's your favorite? I know we talked about the most haunted list and how we don't like that, but what is your favorite locations to go back to?
God, it's there's one in Ashland that I've been able to keep tabs on it for 20 years. It's the Stone's Public House. It used to be called John Stone's Inn. And what I love about it is that it's a restaurant. It used to be an inn. The boarding rooms I've been up in them. They're basically condemned at this point. But it's one of those things where like you hear these stories about like the ghost of a little girl, but then there was a little girl struck by a train. There. And like, I found something historical to back up almost everything. There was a waiter I was talking to, and he's like, "I never believed in ghosts, but then I started working here." And he talked about how in the summer they have the patio open in the front, and a customer said, "Hey, there's a little girl in the window up there. She looks like she's stuck." And I know the room he's talking about, and he knows, and that's just storage. It's not, no one should be in there. And so he's like, "Oh, someone's just sort of messing with me," but they go up and check and no one's in there. And he goes, whatever. And then weeks later, someone else says the same thing. And weeks later, someone says it again. And to me, that's really interesting. And suddenly he's like, either there's this elaborate prank going on all summer long by various customers who every few weeks tell me to look up there, or there's really something up there. And that's the thing, right? A haunting is subtle. It's always subtle. But when you put the pieces together, sometimes it adds up to something. And that's one of those places that, again, it's like a time warp. It's like stepping back into the late 1800s, and staff and owners come and go, but the haunted reputation endures no matter what. So I mean, that's sort of a favorite. And plus it's a really great winter bar, like is a fireplace, and it's a good place for a few drinks or whatever. And on a cold winter day, but there's so many, and it's my least favorite question, because if you had like 500 children, you're like, "Oh, which one's your favorite?" Like you're not supposed to say any of them. But anywhere true. Like history's left a mark, you know what I mean? Or a stain. We can't help but keep looking back at it and picking at that scab and wondering, why it doesn't heal.
Absolutely. All right. Let me think of it. If I can think of any other questions that you'll absolutely hate.
Oh, good.
What's your favorite question? If that was your least favorite.
Oh, this is a top tier interview process right there.
Yeah. How many ghosts are in that place that you just talked about?
37.4.
0.4. Okay. So Dave haunts that place. He's just 0.4. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Gotcha. Perfect. I was watching a little bit of a clip when I was researching the Freetown State Forest, and you popped up in that one. I think I can't remember it was a bigger YouTuber, maybe Exploring with Josh or someone like that.
Oh yeah, Josh. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you were in the Freetown State Forest. You guys were trying to track down like the bunker or whatever, like that.
We were close. We were super close. If we had more daylight and more time, and I think maybe we could have found it. So we had a good lead. Aaron Caju was with us. He's the guy that produced the
we actually
the Bridgewater Triangle documentary.
Long before we did this show, we actually did an interview with him. Super cool guy. Big
he's great.
Skeptic, but super
totally
cool. Yeah,
but he's but a good kind of skeptic. You know what I mean? Like he'll say like, I don't know if I believe in this, but boy, story after story keeps coming up. You know, it doesn't, you can't deny it. So he had a good lead on roughly where the bunker was, and we were out there, man, for hours, just traipsing through these woods. Almost got shot. Like at some point, this guy starts. We hear this whistle, like, you know, and I'm like, what the hell is that? And then we look up in a tree, and there's a hunter in a tree stand, like camo, the whole thing. Never saw him, and he's like, I'm looking for deer. You guys should be careful. None of us are in orange, right? We're just idiot ghost hunters out in the woods looking for a cult bunker. And there's a guy trying to bag a deer. And so thankfully none of us were shot that day. But yeah, no, the Freetown State Forest, like that whole Bridgewater Triangle area, it's got so much mystique to it. And it keeps coming up. You know what I mean? Like ever since Lauren Coleman first wrote it down in the early 1980s, that it just keeps coming up like a bad penny. You know, I mean, stories, something else, you know, emerges, and then we bring it up again.
Yeah. When we were filming for the Bridgewater Triangle episode, I was in the Freetown State Forest for all of 5 minutes before some hunter walked right by me with all his gear and sniper rifle and stuff like that. I'm like, hey, you just doing a TikTok live?
Yeah, right.
Trying to get a little content here.
So when we did the New England Legends TV series for PBS, we were in October Mountain out in Western Mass, and there's been Bigfoot sightings out there. So we were filming a reenactment and had a Bigfoot suit. And it was my turn to wear the Bigfoot suit. And how you film a Bigfoot reenactment is that you just go way away from the camera and you walk around in the Bigfoot suit. And so I'm walking around and I went, wow, this could be how I die.
Yeah. I mean, at that point you got to, before you go into it, you have to talk to someone that, you know, you trust and be like, hey, listen, if this is how I go, you absolutely have to write it on my headstone because that's hilarious, right?
It's amazing.
Died wearing a big monkey suit.
Yeah, it was because like some hunter could be in a tree stand and be like, no one's gonna believe me. I see Bigfoot and I have this gun. I got it. I'm gonna take him out and I'm gonna bring him home and I'm gonna be rich.
Yeah, because we know if he took a picture of him, it was going to be shitty.
I'd just be blurry. I'd just be moving too quick, like, right?
That's the thing. People underestimate how fast he is.
Yeah.
But we have a question in chat for you, real quick.
Real quick. What if all Bigfoot sightings are actually just guys that were in Bigfoot costumes that got shot?
Yeah, and
it's their ghost.
Yeah, no, that's airtight. That's got to be the explanation.
Because they were about to get married, but then their wife left them, and you know, you get the jilted husband. All right, so we have a question for Jeff from Steph A. Says, what is your favorite haunted place that's not Northeast or Texas?
Oh yeah, God, there's so many. When I was in Sydney, Australia, I got to go to Manning Quarantine Station, and Manning was like their Ellis Island, except the Aussies were brutal. I mean, if you walked in and sneezed getting off the boat, they were just like, you go in there. You know, they quarantined everybody. And I mean, families were separated, children were pulled apart, and you were often just left there to die. A lot of people died of various illnesses and so on. And you walk around and it's very well preserved. It's a big part of their heritage. And you walk through these old buildings and so on, and man, you just feel it. You feel it everywhere. That's definitely one where you just, I don't know, that had a profound effect. But yeah, I'll go anywhere. Like I love when you walk where history was made. You know what I mean? I once had the chance to go to the Tower of London after hours as a guest of one of the yeoman warders who lived there, you know, and
really
drink in their pub, and every yeoman warder. And keep in mind, these are like distinguished military officers with like 20 plus years of military service, staff sergeant or higher rank, who live at the Tower of London, don't just work there, but live there. And every one of them had ghost stories, every one of them. and they're so matter of fact about them. It's just like, yes, well, you know, the queen's jewels were kept here, the stonework was done there, this was there, and it's haunted. And I'm like, that's amazing. It's just a fact. It's just like anything else. And that was cool. Because
it's always nice when they actually want to have the conversations with you. And
well,
when you get military guys like that, it's cool too. One of the first episodes that we covered was Fort Point, and a lot of those accounts, and the Warrens went there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those accounts came from military officials that are like, yeah, we can't use this room because it's too haunted.
and they're just reporting, right? That they're like, look, I maybe there's no such thing as ghosts, but I saw this thing levitate, I saw this apparition go by, whatever. But I'm just reporting what I saw, just the facts. And I love that approach to it, that it doesn't have to mean something more than exactly what it is. And that's what a ghost is, right? It's left up to our interpretation, whatever you know. So at the Tower of London, they change the keys every night. They've been doing this for 700 plus years, where the yeoman warder turned the guard over to the army for the night, and there's this whole ceremony to it. Whose keys are coming? The Queen's keys, now the King's keys, and anyone who's allowed to witness this, you're supposed to face the ceremony at all times until it's over. And it's only about 5 minutes. But I was told by someone that when the ceremony is happening in the central court, that often Anne Boleyn's headless ghost will stand at the banks of the Thames and watch the ceremony. So here's like a group of like a dozen of us all paying attention, God save the Queen and all that other stuff. And I'm the one American who's just,
you gotta look.
Looking the other. I'm like, if her ghost is right behind me and I didn't look, like who's the idiot, right? Yeah. So I'm the one guy looking behind me, and they're like, oh, Americans, you know.
Yep. I visited I was in London recently. I went to the 10 Bells pub because that was kind of the central of the Jack the Ripper, not necessarily the hauntings, but at least the center of where all the murders took place. They believe that he was scouting out his victims there. And of course I had to ask. So I went in there, and like, it's busy as hell. It's crowded inside. It's really crowded outside, which is a thing in London where like everyone just kind of stands on the sidewalk outside of a pub and also drinks there. They have like tables set up outside. Not that uncommon in other places as well, but in this place, packed inside, packed outside. It's also the size of my office, like the super tiny little pub. And I remember like I shuffled my way through the crowd, ordered a couple drinks. It was also just like, is it haunted? And the bartender's like, yup. And then just, like keeps going. I was like, right. I got the info. Can't wait to use this on the show.
Got an exclusive.
Yeah, that's all you get.
Another exclusive.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, but there's not too many places over there that aren't haunted. You know what I mean? Those buildings are so much older than ours. You know, and they've just seen so much history that they're just like, yeah, of course it's haunted.
Yeah, it's insane. When we get a building out here that's 100 years old, we're like, this is an old one. Yeah. This is an old one. Then I go to Greece. I'm visiting shit that's 7,000 years old. I'm like, this is an old one. This is really an old one, you know? So anyways, Jeff, we're running along here, so we do have to run. Anything you want to plug? Anything you got coming up?
No, I appreciate being with you guys. It's been great. And no, like I said, the podcast is New England Legends, and Ghost Adventures is every week on Discovery. And I'm just grateful to be out here searching with you guys. So thanks for having me.
I didn't know you looked so close. I'm gonna have to link up on an investigation sometime. We'll keep in touch for sure.
As long as there's beer.
Oh, there will be. There will be. Yeah, we're experts at that for sure.
It's in the rider. To be clear.
Yeah. For folks watching, stick around, and we will, after we close out the show, we will air some of this REM pod footage. It's nothing too, like I said, I wanted to play it because we did promise it. But anyways, thank you so much for joining. Again, go follow Jeff. He's on Twitter, all his socials, and links are below in the show notes. I'm sorry, he's on X. That's what it's called these days. And but an absolute
I'm
pleasure.
glad you cleared that up. No one had any idea what you were talking about.
Yeah, Twitter. What is this? 3 months ago? But anyway, so thanks a lot. You're an expert and absolute legend. And actually, you're one of the good ones. We do like you. You're good as a guest on the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, hell yeah, you got the chemistry, because apparently you know a thing or two about podcasting. So always good to have. Absolutely. Anyways, thank you, Jeff. We'll catch you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Yes. Want to give a big shout out once again to Demon King, who gifted a total of 40 memberships in chat. Seth Wilkins donated $2 in super chat and said, "Did you bring Jumbo? Does Jeff know of Jumbo?" Sorry, I missed that, but no, he probably doesn't know about Jumbo. For those of you wondering who Jumbo is, that is our Kikimora in a box that we talked about in the San Antonio episode. So I think that will pretty much do it. Do we have any reviews we want to dive into, or anything we want to close it out with?
Yeah, we got a 5-star review from Apple here, from Escapee658 with the title #GhostGoals. And they wrote, "Can't stop listening. Heard these guys on another podcast. I'm guessing it's Paranormal Portal, but I'm not sure. Don't be afraid to say where you heard us. Liked what I heard and figured I'd give the show a try. By the end of episode 1, I was hooked. A few days later, and I'm on episode 25 now. Each show has been as good or better than the last. If you are a paranormal enthusiast, listen to this podcast. The format is great, the discussion is informative, and the banter cracks me up. A few things for the guys. 1, I know no one knows the rules of what happens when you die, but I am going to haunt Paris. # ghost goals. I love the music and videos. Keep up your debunking and debunking of debunkers. And watch the movie Clue already, which is not in reference to me because I have seen the movie Clue. Have neither of you seen Clue? I can't remember.
I think I've
I don't
seen
think
it.
is that was Brandy in it?
Tim Curry was in it. What? Was
Am I thinking
Brandy
of
in it?
different? I'm thinking of something totally different.
What? It's like from the
Clueless.
early 80s.
Clueless.
Was Brandy in Clueless?
I don't know. Maybe not.
What
She must have been in something, right?
She-
IMDb her right now.
Made music, yeah.
She killed a guy.
What? All right, we don't have to dive into the history of Brandy on this show as we're trying to end this stuff. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has actually been, I believe this was the most live concurrent viewers. I know we say that often, but it's always a milestone that we like to share. So we do appreciate you guys all for liking, sharing, and tuning into the program. Thank you so much. Stick around. Oh, let's thank our patrons. That's a thing we do. I'm so off my game today because we talked. It's one of those shows where we did an interview, so we talked about absolutely every single subject. So I forgot what I do in life. All right, let's start off with our VIPs, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't already, you can join on Patreon for as little as $3 a month and get your name in the credits and read out like this. For our VIPs, we have Dave D, Kate and Steve M, Blazora, Glitter Tees, Cami from Washington, Kelly C, Jennifer P, Dakota G, Nick, Donnie N, Inspires Gaming, Allison V, Robert H, Anna C, J9, Mallory K, Demon King, once again, who this episode is dedicated to. Thank you so much, Demon King, and Mom and Pops W, as well as Lisa J, and a Hair Days Nightbot. Rob still uses a flip phone. Thank you so much for being members of the VIPs on Patreon. Next up, we got our Warren's Wards. Kicking it off with Lacey, Nefarious Chad Poles, Wahini Pirate, I Hate Rob, Julie G, Eugene M, Arcade Hunters, Siobhan Not Sharon, Kath Q, Liz Young, DC, Chris Connolly, LBPS founder, Next HTGS guest, the other Rachel B, Sarah Cook, Stitch Kitten, Ambi Rose, Janice G, Jesse's allegedly discovered bone fragments, Lily, Rachel B, the state of Austin is the 6th tallest state, still applies. Sydney, always looking in a mirror. Bowman, Papa Squatch. We have Ginger Steel Souls to see their reflection, Steph A. And Stan the Man with the ham hands. Welcome back to Patreon. Stan the Man with the ham hands and loving it as well. Thank you so much for being part of the Warren's Wards. Next up, we have the Ghost Pirate Mafia. And let's kick that off with Rachel G. I don't know if Rachel knows, but we only accept Rachel B's. Yeah. So you could have been the third one. Make those changes. No, it's okay. Rachel G, thank you so much for being a member on Patreon. A brand new one, indeed. Cold Warrior, we have, hey Siri, show me pictures of Dave and Rob's nipples. I can't believe I just said that. I now have to make sure that my Siri isn't actually doing that. We're good. Next up, we have insert vague reference from a missed live stream. D from H-Town, Meta Us, Sarah B, Dominica. We have Queen Chan's Revenge, Angel the Defiler, Monster Mom 04, Shannon K, Allie Dark Snark. We have Scapitally Wumpus, the Great Worm Wrangler of the Ohio, demands tribute in the form of SpaghettiOs.
I'm so glad
exactly what that means. Yeah, absolutely. Megan S, Morgan S, Hometown Dave's Missing Beard Stories. Mark Twain and the Haunted Grape, Sharon V, Wayne C, Sucking Back that should be pickled, but it says picked. So Sucking Back picked toe shots with the king. That should be pickled. Nancy, update that. Add an L. Crystal Quinn, Aaron A, Mina H, Colby the Unnamed Serial Killer, Daddy Rob is thicker than Spooky Snickers. We have Alicia Espinoza, Thick Boy Freddy, and Samoa Ghost versus Colonel Mustard in the Driskill with a poorly yeeted, hella haunted, super creepy painting. Well
Very
done.
quick.
Swanee, Hometown Scootin' Stories, the 6th tallest stream in the state of Austin. Sam from Nepal. Joe, yes, Australia does have states. R. Paul from St. Louis, Al Capone, Huggy Bear. Can't think of anything. Oh, well, this Patreon name blows. Solar Flammer, I am. Kira Lee J. Anthony Rob sucks on toes. Don't let him fool you. T. That's a fact, right? Cody G. Brandon W. Hooper the Hellhound. Soph and the REM pod. I had to nail that. I wasn't sure where it was going to go because I didn't look at the end first. I wasn't sure if I was going to do dolphin noises, so I kind of went a little bit dolphin on that. But the REM pod has a little bit of dolphin in it, right? Okay. And this is the end of our 3-hour broadcast. If you want to watch more, then stick around. We'll play a little bit of this REM pod video, and you'll understand why it didn't make it to the audio portion of the show. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.